Hey, dirty old Yakuza fan here, just desperate to make a video about Like a Dragin Gaiden, the man who erased his name. And I don't know how he did it, but I wish I could do it sometimes too, because my high school years were embarrassing. In any case, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this game because I am absolutely obsessed with the RGG Studios Like a Dragon and Yakuza series. Ever since I played Yakuza Kiwami 1 in like 2018, I have just been playing all these games back to back to back until about early last year when I had finished them all. I swear I have a life, I just did not sleep a lot. Now going into this game right before release, I was so damn excited to just be playing as Kiryu again. It feels like forever since we've properly played as the man himself, and I was just really excited to get right into it. I was a little skeptical because of Nagoshi leaving the studio, but honestly, after playing this, I am not skeptical about anything with this studio anymore. Now the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was the story, and this story takes place right after Yakuza 6 where Kiryu is presumably dead. Happens to the best of us. We see little glimpses of him in Yakuza Like a Dragon with the other crew, but we don't really get to see much of Kiryu in that game, so this is his own little separate series leading up to the newer game that comes out next year. Now, I gotta say, this game started off pretty strong and had me hooked from the very beginning, and from that very first initial scenario, I was just hooked to play as Kiryu again, and I couldn't wait to see what this smaller experience had to offer for the rest of the game. And most of my time throughout the experience, that pretty much remained true. I was excited to play as Kiryu again, and there were some slight, like slower moments, and that happens in pretty much every single Yakuza game as you're slowly building up all your skills and everything, and meeting new people. But, towards the end, this is a spoiler thing, but I just gotta talk about the end. The ending of this game is so much more satisfying than anything that Yakuza 6 had to offer, and I know it's, I guess, technically not the end to Kiryu's story because we're hoping to see him in the next game with the other crew, but this was a much more appropriate ending, so I was just really happy to see Kiryu again and roleplay as my favorite old Japanese man who likes to bust in some skulls. And by the end, there's not a lot of games that make me cry, but I gotta say, I think this is one of the few games that definitely had me on the verge of just tearing up and bawling, because watching him in those final moments, just look at how he's just impacted the kids' lives and just giving Kiryu the chance to just kind of get a glimpse into what the kids have been doing. And for me, it was just a great moment in the series and probably one of the best stories in all the Yakuza games, if I'm being honest. And I don't really want to diminish the middle of the story because I've talked about the beginning and the end a lot, but the middle is also really great. There's some moments in there, like when the Daidoji faction has Kiryu all bound up, and my blood was boiling. I was getting so mad, I just wanted to beat the crap out of every single one in there, even though that probably could have resulted in something else bad happening, but I was getting really emotional in those moments. And if what the rumors are said to be true is that this game was made in like 6 months or under a year, and that's so impressive because they just shoehorned in this like little subplot for Kiryu. But it ended up being probably one of the best and most simple plots in the entire series, and it was very straightforward. It knew exactly what it wanted to do, had a beginning and an end, and it got there beautifully. Now I've seen some weird controversies and all this other crap that's going on. I don't care too much about that, but I've also seen from a lot of people that have played maybe 1 or 2 games, especially like people who just played 0 and then went on to like this or maybe one other game in the series, saying that you don't need to play the other Yakuza games to really get into this. And I just kind of gotta say bullshit to that. Yeah, you can play it obviously, but I think that whole ending sequence is going to impact you a lot differently if you haven't played like Yakuza 3, for instance. If you haven't like hung out with those kids or at all, or if you like barely know who they are just from like some little pictures, or that that Kiryu cares about them, I could be wrong, but I just feel like you're not going to get the same emotional impact that I got. But I don't know, I've played Yakuza 3 and all the other ones, so maybe I'm just being a dirty Yakuza elitist. Now I just want to talk a little bit more about the combat system, because it's definitely unique in this game, and I really enjoyed it. The first thing that's blatantly different is the new agent style. I'll admit, at first, it was definitely not something I was really getting into. As soon as I got the Yakuza style, I went right into using that for almost everything. And the agent style I just wasn't feeling it. However, slowly you just get more and more little bits and pieces to kind of make that whole fighting style just a little bit better as you get every new tool, and especially when you start upgrading those tools. Because once I started upgrading them, that's when things started to get crazy. When I started being able to do a lot more with the tripwire, and I realized you can really juggle people, kind of like Akiyama and Yakuza 4 and 5 a little bit, where you're juggling them in the air. Once I figured out you could do that kind of stuff with the tripwire, I was way more into using the agent style for different scenarios, and I was using it much more often, and I wasn't just sticking to the regular Yakuza style that we all know and love. Now, combat in this game for the most part is pretty damn good, and it's one of the highlights, I think. I will say my one gripe is that enemies are just dastardly with some of the weapons and stuff that they have. Blades and swords and daggers just do so much damage with bleed damage, and I think it's almost to the point where it might need to be patched, because it's a little egregious at points. And I was playing on hard through most of the experience, but once I got into some of the crazier fights in like the arenas or in the Coliseum, I had to just turn it down to normal just so I wouldn't rip out my hair, because I didn't want to spend all night trying to beat a couple guys with a sword and a gun, and things were just getting really out of hand. And like I said, I'm not a Yakuza newbie. I've played all the games, and I've played a good portion of them on hard, and this one was definitely kicking my butts at times. And one of the first things I had to do was just put some sort of bleed defense on Kiryu right away, just to negate all that craziness that was going on. But even once I did that, there was still a decent challenge to the game, even when I was on normal, and it was overall a pretty great experience. Like a Dragin Gaiden definitely did not skimp on the boss fights. There's some really great ones in the beginning, and towards the end of the game, some of those fights with Nishitani, our favorite secret Korean for this game, and Shishido are just excellent. That final boss fight with Shishido probably rivals some of the best in the entire series. It's just multiple phases of just men, taking off their shirts and beating the fuck out of each other. And that's just what we love about Yakuza, right? And playing the minigames. And in my opinion, it's probably the craziest final boss fight since Yakuza 5. Bad boss, bad, final villain reveal in my opinion, but the fight itself was pretty epic, and I think this one probably even surpasses that one. Now moving right along to some of the side content, and right off the bat, fighting is one of the main draws for, I think, this game, and the Coliseum proves that, because the Coliseum this time around is just absolutely insane and definitely a treat. I don't think we've ever had a better Coliseum. This is probably the best implementation of anything like that, and what they did with it is just absolute perfection. And I hope they bring it into several other games, or maybe in the Judgment series if they ever continue that, or whatever ends up being still the brawler style games from this moving forward. I especially like that you're able to kind of dress up Kiryu, create a team, and then just go in there with like 10 other dudes and then just beat the shit out of some other group of people. This is the most fleshed out anything like this has ever been in a Yakuza game, and I spent so much time, as you'll probably know throughout this video. That's probably what I'm going to show that's where I spent a lot of my time, just playing and messing around and optimizing my little team and everything. And even though I'm making this video right now, I'm definitely going to go right back into playing some more Coliseum. If I don't play anything else from this point on for the rest of the year, or until Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, I will probably go back just to play some of the Coliseum, because it is just that good, and it kind of makes all the other Coliseums just obsolete in my opinion. I also played a decent amount of Pocket Circuit, and I was definitely having a lot of fun in the very beginning playing some Pocket Circuit. I don't remember this from Yakuza 0 when we last were able to play it in Sotenbori, but it felt more and more like a puzzle than ever before, and maybe it's just because I haven't played Yakuza 0 since like 2019, but it felt like if you don't have the right little pieces on your little pocket racer, then you're absolutely just screwed. You're never gonna get past the person or the next like big trial, and you just won't be able to move forward in the ranks. And when I say not having the right pieces, I mean like not having the right combination, and it feels like there's just that one true combination that does anything, and the rest of them just fail drastically. And that was definitely a little bit frustrating, to the point where after a while I gave up on it. I was just having no fun switching out parts and basically having to buy up the entire shop just to like mess around with it a little bit. It was getting to be a little bit of a waste of my time personally. Now, one thing that was definitely not a waste of time was just doing all the Akame sub-stories and side stories and just like little errands around Sotenbori. This was a pretty great, and I think it's probably because there was a limited time and they didn't have enough time to do a ton of extra sub-stories and a bunch of different characters like they have done in the past. So this time they just decided to limit it to just doing some smaller things, but I don't know, I just liked going up to people and just doing some quick little tasks like grabbing something or fighting someone who's like in the way. I mean, you've had similar things in Yakuza before, but I like having just a little checkbox to it and you get some sort of little progression to it. So I think that was implemented fantastically in this game. There's also some pretty good sub-stories throughout the game. There's one that kind of references Sunflower, where Kiryu obviously grew up, and there's this guy that's kind of shitting on Kazuma's name, and Kiryu ain't having none of that shit. So these little ones that kind of connect all the way back to like Yakuza 0, they're just some great sub-stories. Then there's the usual weirdo ones where you're just collecting some golden balls everywhere, and they're in all the places you'd expect. So yeah, sub-stories, pretty good. Haven't done them all, but can't wait to get back to them. But yeah, again, I'm just a Yakuza fanboy, and I wanted to talk about this game. I didn't know how to properly review it because I am insanely biased on this series, so I just wanted to make a video where I rant about it instead. I love this game, and I can't wait for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and hope to see you next time.